Hello and welcome to the Dead Air Dudes. I'm Izzy,
I'm the Walking Dead rocker.
and we are the Dead Air Dudes. Welcome back after our winter solstice hiatus thingy. So we're here and to discuss all things George Romero, especially. Did you know? Well, obviously, Rocka, you do know, but everyone out there, did you know that George Romero was actually hired to direct the first Resident Evil movie?
So here's the thing.
Take
This
it away,
docu-
Rob.
this documentary came out and it's a little dated in the sense that this should have came out a while ago. But all of those hardcore fans of both Walking Dead zombies, Night of the Living Dead, George Romero, and then into the late 90s, the first survival horror video game of blockbuster success, Resident Evil, arrived. And not to get all jumbled up into back history and everything, this documentary, in my opinion, really chronologically dates the things that happened with a pretty good widespread background of why the king of zombie horror
Mhm.
was not allowed to continue with directing the live action Resident Evil movie, the original, not what we ended up seeing today by was it Paul Anderson.
Paul Anderson, Mila Jovovich, and company from Constantine Films, etc., etc. The documentary in question is called George A. Romero's Resident Evil. It's out on it's on Prime. You can watch it on the Fire Stick. I think it's a couple bucks. It wasn't even that expensive. Or if you
Yeah,
have alternate way
and
to watch it,
it's a quick run. It's not long.
it's I think it's just over an hour. Oh, trying to find
Yeah.
it. Oh. Anyway, point is, if you're a big fan of Resident Evil and or a big fan of George A. Romero, this was a pretty decent documentary from that perspective, where it goes and it kind of pulls no punches as far as the movie is concerned, but it does shine George Romero in a pretty damn good light. Now, we don't know the specifics. After all, he passed away a little while ago. We don't know exactly what happened. But spoilers here. What seems to have happened is that for the company, the studio that wanted to hire George A. Romero to do a zombie version of Resident Evil, I guess it was too much. It was too much
Well,
hope.
all right. If you allow me, give me
Too
3 minutes
zombie.
of time for some back history.
Go ahead.
Right. So Romero, which should be added, is one of the pioneers of indie flicks.
Yes.
So his Night of the Living Dead was an actual independently funded, independent thing. Now, why? Because maybe he didn't know at the time, he was very cutting edge and ahead of his time with both um, social commentary, horror, the gore aspect of all. His movies had in 1968, 69, a lead African American
Hmm.
who slapped a lead white woman on stage in the right in the heart of the civil rights movements, um still coming out of the Cold War era, atomic era, right? So it was still unclear and very fuzzy what caused this Living Dead thing. They
Right.
attribute to meteorite and radiation. So not to get too deep into it, his, let's all say what it was, unexpected success ushered in a subgenre of horror, but also horror. And you could tell that from the 70s, horror movies exploded. and
Yeah.
to the point of gore.
Well, yeah, for that time, there was nothing like it because
Not at all.
you can talk about Psycho and you could talk about Nosferatu and I mean other movies,
But it's pivotal in this
right?
conversation.
But it's not. It did not have the gore that you had flesh eating zombies.
But it's pivotal to this conversation because of rating.
Yeah.
So this ends up being a big deal with the Japanese company, Capcom, and with Constantine Films, German company,
Hmm.
where George Romero's script and vision would almost be a no-no
It
in
was
both
fun.
countries. That's what they attribute as one of the factors why he was basically fired.
Yeah.
Because they said, no, this is too graphic. I can't rate, we cannot show this in our countries, and we're the ones funding this.
But
Even
the
though
thing is a okay, you're talking about that. And mind you, the Japanese didn't have so much a problem with it as you know they
Germany did.
Germany did the Constantine film because they still wanted to. But what were you buying? Didn't you know that you're watching that the game you're playing is about zombies, fresh eating zombies? Where you, hey, headshot with the freaking shotgun. We used to play that all
Well,
the time. And
we have to say that when it came out, there was nothing like that either. Just like there was nothing like the first Night Living Dead, there was really nothing like the first Resident Evil PlayStation 1.
That's biohazard, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
biohazard.
right. It was Biohazard based on Sweet Home the movie, which was a haunted mansion, and the whole thing. I watched part of Sweet Home. It's okay. I mean, for the date and time it was all right. But the way it parlays and the Japanese writers and directors, all in the historic part of Biohazard, were George Romero fans. Of course, everybody worshipped him because there would not be us today if it weren't that. You know what the irony is? The Resident Evil movie, actual movie that came out, was full of blood and gore.
Yeah, but not, but
I understand, not the way
there's
George would do it.
gore and there's blood, but not the same. It's not the same. It's
So
not sanitized blood and gore. It's not
the,
terrified blood and gore. And George Romero was, I mean, I guess before, I mean, and I'm using Terrifier as an example, that type of blood and gore, you know?
we again, there's politics involved. There's money, obviously, because when Resident Evil debuted, it became such a hit, sales wise and everything
So the
else.
game in the movie,
The
you
game.
got to be specific. Yes.
No,
Okay.
we gotta go back to the game because this is where things move forward. The game. It was such a hit, they couldn't wait. They were salivating to get Resident Evil 2 out.
Hmm.
And according to everything from the magazine, from the documentary, from everything I've read, part of the irony is just mind blowing. Part of the Constantine and Capcom point of view is they almost didn't want an exact storytelling of Resident Evil 1 because they didn't want to spoil the debut of Resident Evil 2
Which makes sense. I mean, I guess in a way.
in a marketing way. But from a fan perspective, I was so immensely disappointed. Even though I was a Mila Djokovic fan, even though I liked the actual movie itself, I can't say it was terrible,
I did not like the movie. The movie was
but
shit.
I was so
No,
disappointed.
2020 hindsight, the movie is shit. You know why the movie is shit? Because back then we were starving for to see what we envisioned or what we played on the silver screen.
Exactly.
You go back and you go, you know, take another perfect example. You go back and you say, oh wow, X-Men, the first X-Men wasn't that good, man. But we
Let me
back
ask
and it
you
was
this.
the first of everything, so therefore it seemed to be better than what originally was. Same exact example with Resident Evil.
Let me ask you this question.
Okay.
Do a mind sweep right now. Clear that thing out. If it's 2000 and RE2 didn't come out yet, and you and I went to the movie theaters after what playing Resident Evil 1 to death and everything, and we saw Welcome to Raccoon City,
Okay.
be you'd be more you'd like it more?
Hold on. So you're saying I did
Even
not
Resident Evil 2 was just about to come out, and there's all this stuff.
And did we see the movie or no?
And we didn't see any of the Anderson movies, but the first movie we see live action is Welcome to Raccoon City, which we reviewed. But
Okay.
because I would appreciate it and actually liked it more, not love it, because it at least was very similar to the storylines. The whole thing's a little tainted because of where they gone with this, and I feel bad because you got Capcom people, you have Constantine people, and then you also have poor PR. Like you learn he was fired from like Fangora or some other magazine instead of a press release or some big deal. It was so kind of
Things were different back then. I mean,
it
dude,
was unclassy.
you saw it in a zine in a magazine that I don't even think was a major magazine. It wasn't, Variety or Hollywood Reporter or anything like that. Now that would have been spoiled freaking by 8,500 different sites and
It,
tweets and
it would be a tweet on X.
I mean, come on. No, tweet on Twitter, not on X. But
All right, so
wait,
I mean, in the doc, it tells you of the first draft written by I forgot his name right now, but he was a pretty good writer. And the writer of the first draft, which was rejected by Constantine, was very close to the gameplay.
yes,
To the point that they were like, "Nah, this is too close." Like you scratch your head, like, "Well, what do you want?" Then you
exactly.
have
You make it
Romero.
too close or you make it too, and so then and I give George credit because his screenplay, he did every single thing they wanted him to do. They added he shoehorned every character he could get: the spiders, the dogs, the hunters, the I mean the liquors. I mean, well, the liquors came later on, but you get what I'm saying. I mean, everything that the mansion,
It's
all
a
that
secret
stuff,
lab mountainside.
the
The whole
tyrant, everything was in the script down to getting a rocket launcher to eliminate the freaking it was
and George was ahead of his time in diversity.
would have
He
been
had like an American Indian
I mean,
lead.
yeah, Chris was gonna be Native American, which would have been freaking awesome.
It would have. I can't help but think it would have been awesome. Now, rumor was he made that 30-second commercial.
Yeah, for Biohazard 2, which if you guys want to see a snippet of George's version or George's vision, you can find it on YouTube. Just pull it up, George Romero, Biohazard 2 or Resident Evil 2 trailer, and it actually has a couple people from Hollywood, in particular, this kid's name, Brad Renfro?
But I was really floored. I was surprised when they said that he had like an extended version. He was almost displaying a teaser
Of course.
for the whole movie, which would have been absolutely awesome.
Just imagine, just imagine what would have been. I mean, when you see Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, we're talking about those because those already were. You had better practical effects. You had better
But
special.
he would have had
You
Tom
had
Savini, he would
really,
have had
you
Nick
had oh yeah,
Notaro, he
you
would have
had
had all these
of
people,
course, who was probably freaking like 10 years old at the time. But I
but he
mean,
would have had all these people invested in the makeup and the special effects. It
yeah,
would have been. I mean, can you imagine like the transformations, the ghouls, the hunters coming out, the different scenes? He had this flair for an unexpected, dramatic introduction to a monster or something.
of course. Bottom line is that you have directors who they believe and they feel that horror is a true genre and they don't snub their noses at it, and it is a true to scare someone and make them elicit that response that brings in fear, terror. it's no easy feat. Okay. Now we're talking about that. We're not talking about a jump scare. We're not talking about which that's actually works as well. We're not talking about you have that sense of dread that the gore you have. It's all. I mean, look, he not only did this, he did other movies and which he also did his chops. But I don't know, man. I mean,
Well, again, it's big business who thinks they knew better.
yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is they didn't, because like you and I, we both thought that the ensuing Resident Evil live action franchise is a bunch of CGI mess.
But at the same time, does Constantine Films feel that way? No, they have a
No,
successful
they
franchise
cash cowed this sucker.
made over maybe, and this is, I don't know the exact numbers, but probably close to $500 million. Definitely more than $100 million.
That's why they made like seven, eight of them.
Yeah, so they close to made almost $1 billion off that franchise, and come on, Mila Jovovich became a household name and a star, and they got married. Her and
Yeah, they have like kids in the whole Anderson.
I guess kudos to them as well, and it spawned out another movie which I mean kind of flopped, and the series which only Rocka loved it, so no one else did. But if you want, you can mercifully watch the review somewhere in the on our channel as well.
I mean, and you can't people cannot refute these numbers and stuff. Like RE2 was the number one selling, like $70 million opening weekend on a video game.
Yeah, and as much as I love Resident Evil, RE2 is a superior game. I mean,
It's superior gameplay. I mean, also the original introduced the, oh, you can pick one or two different characters, and you see the whole thing unfold from a third person point of view with decisions that affect the other one. If you carry an extra pack, if you take this
no,
ammo.
of course you have all that. Heck, this actually saved Capcom, and
Oh yeah.
if it wasn't for Resident Evil, Capcom wouldn't you wouldn't have all these. You wouldn't have the continuation of the Street Fighter franchise. You wouldn't have. I mean, there's so many franchises that they have that in addition, and now you have a reimagining or a reboot of the original that are it's probably even better than the original.
You know, it's crazy. I mean, a good thing that comes out of this documentary is, if anything, it reminds people about Romero.
Yes, and that's what I took from it in particular was the fact that you get to see how much he was loved. You get to see how much of a genius he was in what he did,
And who he inspired.
exactly who he inspired, and the fact that all parties involved did their best, and yet it still worked out, which is kind of crazy. But you still have that what if.
They,
Constantine
if,
fired him, and they still were successful, made a shit ton of money, probably more than they would have made with George Romero anyway. You know that, right?
yeah,
There's a very good chance that going the action, I mean
it's like inside.
PG-13 because that's PG-13 horror
That's their sweet spot
worked better than a hard R because it would have been a hard R. Would have been
for
people's
sure.
faces getting torn off, and it would have been
For
just it
sure.
would have been just Michelle Rodriguez getting bid or freaking or no, it wouldn't have been that.
You know what's crazy is you and I have spoken about this, especially when Walking Dead was teetering on its nastiness towards the end there.
Right.
The zombie genre, we thought many times, at least I thought, there's going to be zombie fatigue, zombie fatigue, zombie fatigue. No,
Well, because zombie has turned, it's gone to the point where you have vampires, you have werewolves, under, you have ghosts, then the paranormal, you have your traditional religious horror, demonic possession, etc., etc., etc. And now you have zombies, along with slashers and serial killers, etc., 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 etc. But it's there, and it will forever be there. And the granddaddy of them all is Romero. For what do you give the documentary? Which again, for the record, is George A. Romero's Resident Evil. What do you give it?
I give it a 7 for this reason. I thought it would be higher, but after I sat back and I saw it, I think there was a little bit of I would better like more representation from the people from Constantine and Capcom.
It was pretty one-sided, yes.
Yeah, where I wanted a rep from that era. I don't want somebody from today. I want somebody from that era to say, okay, not that we're wrong or right or whatever. This is exactly what happened on our end. Because we do get a lot from there. And of course, they're all George supporters. If it's a doc, you want as much both sides of the story.
You want both sides. I mean, but you have a doc, you have everybody's pro George, and even you have all the biohazard people who were also pro George, and they all were like, "Damn, this could have happened, but we're happy that whatever, yada yada yada," and explain that. But the Constantine side, which is what I mentioned before,
Yeah,
they don't care because they
I
were
know. But
successful.
and I feel bad that they couldn't get them because it's not their fault if they request and they just get never an answer or reply. But it would have been a more well-rounded doc if you had a guy from Constantine, if you even had Paul Anderson, if you had any of these other people from that side to just, you don't have to defend it or trash it or whatever. You don't have to be apologetic, but contribute.
Right.
That's the unfortunate thing why I just feel it lacks a little bit because I'm sick of watching documentaries that are one sided because to me it's not a true doc.
No, I
That's
see.
my only gripe.
I mean, I see what you're saying. I give it a 6 for, obviously a similar reason. Not to mention, I just think it's, and this is gonna sound bad. It's like who cares? It's way too late.
That yeah, we started out by saying that too. This
I
doc should have
mean,
been out like in the 2000s.
if this was maybe 10 years ago,
Well, he's still alive
we're still alive. That's one thing. Then you have a. I mean, you mean tell me it took you this long to do it, and then you don't have all the information. You have a lot of information, but you don't have the other side. You don't. I mean.
because that's the other thing. It doesn't bring anything new to the table.
No, it doesn't. I mean, all this stuff you could pretty much
Wikipedia
read in Wikipedia. Yeah. I mean, it was nice to hear from the creators of Biohazard and how they went about doing that. That was cool. That I did not know from Sweet Home and how they built it up and how they were fans of George Romero and how, you know, their whole game plan and their whole thought process into making the game. All that was very interesting and pretty cool. Now, everything else was okay. I mean,
I mean, I'm in the midst of playing the remake of RE2, and I mean, you can't. It was awesome the first one, but you can't replace the amount of CGI upgrades there are today. It's phenomenal, and the storyline's a little different, but the action, the cutscenes, and all that stuff is fantastic. Uh, it's a completely different route than the first one. Not worse. It's just different. I still enjoy it, and then I sit back, watch playing this game. I watch the documentary. Occasionally, we'll watch a horror movie, an old one, a good one, a bad one, a new one, a zombie one. I mean, just recently, 2019 was Train to Busan. I mean, it's not dying, thank God, because to me, it touches my heart as far as the number one horror subgenre I love is zombies. I know you got a little place tucked away for vampires,
yeah, I mean, but
but still, you know what it is that he has brought in 1968, he brought that human Elliot, where the horror is not so much the ghoul, it's each other.
well, that's one thing you can always. He's one of the first, I guess, definitely. I'll probably one of the first. I mean, I'm not gonna say the first, but one of the first horror directors who everything had a purpose, meaning there was an underlying meaning to everything that you can see. It's not just some dude hacking and slashing and saying, you know what, don't have unprotected, don't have premarital sex, and just kill all the kids. No. Consumerism, obviously, in Dawn of the Dead. We have freaking, all this stuff in Night of the Living Dead, in Day of the Dead. And as, I hate to knock him, but as he got older, his last three zombie films,
Oh,
I, I remember the one we actually saw that they were getting smarter. Remember that one? It
was
was
with the gun.
on Leguizamo and everything. Land of the Dead it was called, but the Land of the Dead, I think it was.
There's like the gas attendant there.
Yeah, and which I get the idea. And then there's another one I think is Diary of the Dead,
Diary of the Dead, which was very social laden.
and there was another one, Island of the Dead or some shit. There was another one. The last two in particular were not as. But yeah, I mean,
Well, yeah, can't all be winners.
no, of course.
But like you mentioned before, at least this movie can shake the tree with some people. He did other movies other than zombies. And if you wish to just appreciate his eye and what he delivered to the table, those are good movies too. You can go and watch those movies because, again, without him, I don't know if there'll be today's type of standards. Where, again, you said it, he brought horror to a point that it's not just blood and guts and scare, it's a movie. There's a plot, there's a character, there's dynamic effects, there's culmination, there's the typical climax drop, everything, the delivery at the end, some surprise twists, and really screwed up.
Crazy. The Crazies was great, man.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying is that he knows how to
Martin was
out.
very good too.
And again, he didn't go to traditional film school either.
No,
Again, he self-funded a lot of these projects. Hollywood at the time was not ready for him.
he was in New York because he's from New York, but he did all this in Pittsburgh. Again, no knock against Pittsburgh, but it's Pittsburgh, you know? He cultivated and everything was filmed over there, and he cultivated and brought up that whole area and that whole area's film, you know, environment and everything. So look, if you're a fan of George Romero, watch a documentary, you'll enjoy it. If you're a fan of Resident Evil, there's enough stuff here that you'll enjoy. If you're looking for something that's gonna, that you're gonna learn too much, no, it's not earth-shattering, but it's good enough to watch. Definitely check it out.
Absolutely check it out and go watch some of the other flicks. Go your PlayStation, PS5, whatever. Go play the game again. Enjoy yourselves. Um, if there's really nothing else on, go watch the movies.
Well, stop at day. That's it. That being said, I'm Izzy.
I'm Rocka. Remember to always save the whales and kill every zombie out there.
Two to the head. Take care, everybody. How you turn this off?
Put that in. Keep that in. You know what I like?